Ryan, what's the problem with primitives?
They come a dime a dozen.
Any art form, painting, poetry, or music, is that they come a dime a dozen. You can trip over them in the streets. Anyone can present himself as a primitive when they might be quite simply untalented, or just lazy, or money-minded, or all three at once.
That's right. Welcome to the Way of the Leaf. This is our Tavern Talk, our Sunday spoiler-filled edition of our show. I am Ryan's brother Dan. Over there is my brother Ryan. Below us is Jansen and Beth, our co-hosts. And we have a special guest today, the venerable, the esteemed, the awesome background. Your glasses kind of match your wall there. Shelly! Wise one, Shelly.
Hi.
Welcome aboard, Shelly. How's everyone doing?
Great.
We are...
I'm good.
we're going to jump into pacifism in the Wheel of Time, guys. When you think of fantasy novels in general, you don't think of pacifism. It's generally it's a battle to the death, and the good guy wins usually, right? But there are elements of pacifism within the Wheel of Time. There's an entire community that we've named our channel after their belief, the Way of the Leaf. But there's others as well, and so we're so glad to have Shelly on with Beth and Jansen and Ryan and I to dig into the concept of pacifism, what Robert Jordan actually thought of the idea, I think, and what societies practiced it or had elements of it within the story itself. Right? Is that right, Ryan?
That's good synopsis.
Yeah. Thank you. Jansen, how are you, my friend?
I'm fantastic. How are you, brother?
I'm better to see you. Always.
I'm doing
Beth, your connection is awesome.
Is it awesome, or is it like guys telling me it's awesome because you think
workable.
it's awesome? Okay, it's workable. Okay, if it gets bad, it must be my mesh network. It must be acting up because I reset my router and my mesh is still not liking me right now. So if that's the case, I can always switch to my phone or my iPad if it gets bad. But
no, you're doing great.
I'm fantastic.
I'm wondering how many people know what she means when she says mesh network. I don't.
I thought of. Yeah, I went somewhere else, right? I don't even want to talk about it.
I have a hernia surgery
It's
and
not-
I have a
it's
mesh
not-
on my tummy.
Okay, it's
But if
not
your
like-
mesh it doesn't work, call this law firm.
Exactly. It's nerd stuff.
Okay.
It's like techie, nerdy stuff. And if it ends up being very splotchy, then I will gladly drop and use my phone.
You're
'Cause,
doing
you know,
great.
You're
No,
doing great.
it's
We're
doing
not
great.
here to talk nerd stuff. We're here to meet our friend again, Shelly,
our bestest friend.
Best friend.
Bestest friend.
the best DM.
The best DM as well.
you.
Yes. And DM is Dungeon Matriarch. People.
Oh.
Matriarch. That's right.
I totally thought you were going to say Dungeon Mistress.
I mean,
No,
that's
she's
true.
not in
I
the chat right now, is she?
actually suggested that, but Matriarch won. So.
We tossed it around, but because Dungeon Mistress has multiple meanings,
Mhm.
and while we don't kink shame, that's not what I'm here to do.
Excellent.
I'm here
Excellent.
to tell my players exactly what to do, sometimes berate them for their choices,
Yeah. Yeah,
maybe
sounds-
put them in confinement sometimes,
Right,
and they
yeah.
can beg me to get them out of it. Nothing like what a Dungeon Mistress would.
Wait a minute. So why aren't we calling you Dungeon?
I know, yeah, that's a mistress.
Yeah, no, that's just like it.
So, no like flogging or anything like that.
No. Imaginary flaws.
Without
They
it-
come from the-
Without consent.
Yeah.
Without consent.
Yeah, they all come from the NPCs.
Well, I'm very glad that you were here. Thank you for joining us. This was actually your suggestion. You were like, I want to talk pacifism. And I'm like, yes, we do too.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I talked
yeah.
about this on Rob's podcast years ago. And then I just remember, like, I've heard you guys multiple times talk about you practice the way of the leaf, we are the way of the leaf. So I always just wanted to, like, talk about what that meant to you and just hear, like, what you guys thought about that and share some beautiful ideas about. That's why I'm not here as Wise One Shelley. I'm just here as Shelley. Wise One Shelley is a,
Stabby.
Yeah, a character who I play on a show who likes to stab things. But this is me coming from, hopefully in the show we'll get into how we came into pacifism, what we love about it, what we struggle with in it, what our kind of backgrounds are. And so this is more me than Wise One Shelley.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could. Let's talk about Robert Jordan himself and the Origins novel by Michael Livingston had an amazing kind of biography of Robert Jordan's life, detailing several things he went through in the Vietnam War, how it affected him, how he literally had to, in his mind, kill the person he was for him to be able to function in society. I mean, it got very bleak and dark. And obviously this comes out in the writing. And it's fascinating to think about how well-rounded Robert Jordan is, because he could have just analyzed war through those lenses. He could have just analyzed violence and how power is manifest through those lenses, but he chose to add an element of pacifism. He created the song and the way of the leaf and a whole society of peoples who act as a counterpoint to everything that's happening, which I have some theories about how it affected Rand in the last battle and his choices at the end, and we'll get to that later. But I do think that it's not, I guess for me, I've claimed pacifism for over 20 years. Luckily, I've not really had to put that into action. I've not been violently attacked and had to be like, no. But it's how I want to live my life. I want to tread lightly. I want to love and care and grow things and not tear anything asunder. So it was very important to me that we were able to take this name for the channel. It's personally a very, very meaningful thing for me, and I was just tickled pink when we discovered that no one had taken it yet. It's one of those things you're like, oh, it's obviously someone's got it.
Kismet.
So someone's got it in the Gmail, but that's it. There ain't nothing else besides that. So we got it, and it's
probably some pothead.
Yep.
I am proud as Punch to be able to represent it, and I do think that even though we are a humoristic show and people can take humor different ways, I do think we have the biggest fucking hearts you've ever seen, and if you meet us in person, you'll know that we absolutely follow the way of the leaf, and you should feel that in interacting with us. So that's my spiel. Thanks for asking, Shelly. I wasn't even prepared to talk about that. That's crazy. Okay, but yeah, no, thanks for that's a great question.
Well, one of my favorite lines that you've ever told me, Ryan, is that it's pretty easy to be a pacifist when you're 6'7". And there is still the recognition of empathy that always exists within a pacifist mentality. And so regardless of your height, I mean, you could have been a big bully and you could probably beat up most people. You're a big guy. And so, but even for defense itself, just, and I guess we'll get into we'll talk about it more when we get into the books, because that's the main struggle I think Robert Jordan had with the way of the leaf itself. I think we'll talk about it in a second. So let's be clear with Robert Jordan. He served 2 tours of duty during the Vietnam War. He was a helicopter gunner. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross with Oak Leaf Cluster, the Bronze Star with V and Oak Leaf Cluster, and 2 Vietnamese Gallantry Crosses with Palm. I don't know what these mean, but they sound prestigious and something you earn, not something you're given,
It's not, those are not participation trophies.
There's also
can I interject
an
very quickly?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say the average life of a door gunner in Vietnam during the war or the encounter was about 6 months. My uncle was a door gunner for the Marine Corps in Vietnam, and he served 3 tours and survived. So they had a very low survivability rate, all things considered. So doing more than 1 tour is considered amazing. And the fact that Robert Jordan did 2 tours, that's life-changing. The things you see and the things you do when you're in a wartime situation really impact you. So I think his experience, it's known his Vietnam experience had a profound impact on his life and his writing. But the odds were greatly against him surviving that first tour and then doing it again. That is amazing. So just wanted to put that in perspective
Mhm,
from
mhm.
personal knowledge from somebody who was there and did that job, that same thing. So yeah.
There's an anecdote of Robert Jordan reflecting on a photo of himself in Vietnam eating lunch, I think, with dead bodies around, and
Yep.
him just being that was just what occurred. That the nonchalance to be eating your sandwich or whatever the heck, and not and he reflected on that. And it may be in Origins if I didn't read it online.
It is. It is.
So this might be a window into his own private feelings as far as war itself. And war is different than pacifism. We should probably distinguish the two. But war itself, he did not seem to have he had a soldier's mentality of it, that it was ugly. He brushed over most of the elements through the fog of war and didn't really get into much detail in his writing, maybe to protect his own self, you know.
You know, that what you just said, it reminds me of, you know, let's see, what was it? Book, The Crown of Swords, Chapter 1, High Chasseline. From Purin's point of view, with all the dead bodies around and all the Aiel are sitting there naked, sitting around all those dead bodies and everything. It just opens that up to me as soon as you hear it. I can just imagine him writing that and visually seeing what he saw. You know, that's crazy.
Right.
I think many writers see writing as a form of therapy. And I'm like, I sometimes wonder if that's partially how Robert Jordan treated some of the stories. Because I've always loved, one of the things I love about The Wheel of Time is it is gritty. Like, I remember, like, in my head, the first time I read through the series, I was like, oh, it's nice. It's like tall hobbits running off on an adventure. And then the second time I read it, I was like, no, like, this is real shit. Like, Demise Wells is really scary, and like when you see it. But what I love about it is he shows the horror of it without glorifying the horror of it, which I think some fantasy writers often fall into, is like they get into the grimdark and it feels almost like they love the grim. I think Robert Jordan loved it. Like, I think he was like, this is me working through how awful this was.
Yeah, we didn't need to hear about the flaying of Reek in Game of Thrones. We didn't need to read every slice like we did, but no, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, and so do you think that Robert Jordan, like, what do you think Robert Jordan's relationship is to pacifism?
I've said this before. I've always thought Robert Jordan was using Perrin as an author surrogate to kind of have a debate himself about pacifism. I think the problem is Robert Jordan wasn't a great debater in it, because I love, and this is one of the questions I always kind of want to get to, is in terms of the Way of the Leaf, because the Way of the Leaf differs from the way I practice pacifism. I practice kind of like what I would call like a social pacifism or an active pacifism, where I, actively seek out injustice and try and work against it. Whereas the Way of the Leaf, when it came to them, they're against it, but in a way they've separated themselves from society. So it's like he's using Perrin to work out one aspect of pacifism, but doesn't really dig into all the ways that pacifism itself can manifest. So it's a fascinating debate, and I think that's what he uses Perrin as a character for. But I don't necessarily think he approaches all the way that pacifism can exist in the world. He just finds this one way, the Way of the Leaf, which is a very strict form of pacifism, and kind of argues with that.
See, I think that there are many forms of pacifism in Wheel of Time. I have actually found, I think, 10 different forms so far while I've been looking through it over the past couple days.
Interesting.
Leave it to Jansen. Leave it to Jansen.
I love you.
Interesting things to talk about. And going back on what you just said, Shelley, I think that, first of all, I think the entire series was a self-portrait of Robert Jordan. So I think that, the yin and yang thing of being, I think that he had pacifism in him, and he also had the exact opposite. I think this entire series was the way of him writing this. This is one of the reasons why I think the Aiel are one of the most awesome groups of people in the books, because the Aiel practice both, not just when you go to chapters like The Road to the Spear from the Fires of from Shadow Rising. It's, back in the day, the Aiel practice. They didn't practice it; they believed in it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And then when you fast forward to now, when we have the Aiel that we have today, that everyone in the world considers some of the most violent people on the face of the earth, they still, Jiito demands that they still have to practice pacifism. They become Gaishan.
Yeah, and towards the Gaishan.
Yes, so they
towards
have
them and from them, yeah.
and to blacksmiths, and so it's like they're a yin and yang walking like group of people, and they have to practice it and the other all the time. And that's just one form. I mean, and then you have other people, because some people practice pacifism in the books, some people believe in pacifism in the books, and some people do both. So there's a lot of ways. And some groups like the Ogier, we have one group of Ogier on the west of the Earth Ocean who practice pacifism. They don't believe they don't want to really hurt anybody, but if you piss him off enough, they will, go violent.
Yeah.
Then we have a group of Ogier on the west side of the Earth Ocean that look at people
east side
like they're ready to kill them.
So would the Ogier, though, be practicing more of a just war than a pacifism?
Well, I think that it depends. If it's war against the shadow, there's a difference, because they still
okay.
Mhm.
I mean, those are. I believe those terms are oxymoronic. Oh no, Beth, you're chopping up.
But I'm gonna. Am I chopping up again?
Yeah, your video is, but we hear you fine.
Oh, I am. Okay, I'm gonna switch my phone, but after I do this video thing, I'm just gonna say,
okay,
or the audio part.
Yes,
I think that the Ogier, their way of avoiding conflict isn't necessarily true pacifism. It's the life that they have lived, because, and the reason why I'm going to say is I'm listening to The Great Hunt again right now, and I'm in the part where Rand is with Selene, and so we're full spoilers tonight, of course, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
Rand is with Selene and Huron and Loyal, and they just saw the male Sa'angreal. So they're in Kyrian. They have the Horn of Valir. They're eating food. Rand has never experienced food like what he just ate, but it is a pork dish. The way of the I hate to use the Chihuahuan are true. They are vegetarian, vegan, whatever you want to call it. Loyal is eating meat. So I am vegan. I do not eat meat. I do not eat animal byproducts. So to me, that resonated with me, because Loyal, he lives a peaceful life. But are the Ogier really pacifists?
Well, you say, but so you have
and that's kind of a legalistic take on pacifism, so to speak. But it's interesting. It's just a take I noted today. It's one of those things, like when you re-listen or you reread, you catch on little things every single time. That's what's so great about this book series, is that you hear things or read things that didn't register with you before. And veganism is new to me. I've only been vegan for about 2 years. So every time, just listening to it, it's very interesting to me to think about that.
He also ate fish with Perrin, you're right.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I'm going to drop, and I'm going to get back on my iPad.
Yeah, that was a good point.
So
because I think
I'll be back.
So it's interesting too, because this comes down to the importance of definitions. Because is nonviolence the same thing as pacifism? And then when you adhere to something like nonviolence, do you extend that to non-human persons, as some people would call them? Like, do you extend that non-violence to animals, and is that pacifism? Because I think, Dan, I don't want to speak for you, but you and I are both pacifists, but we both eat meat.
Right. I was vegetarian for over 20 years, and my dietary needs changed, and so it was it wasn't because of a lack of compassion. Mm-hmm. It was there was other needs that, like, my body just as I got older, it just wasn't happening.
Yeah, my body just shut down and was like, no, you need this.
Right, but I do think do no harm is more or less the pacifist, the basic umbrella that we walk under. And so, yeah, I think that vegetarianism is a reflection of empathy and compassion, and that credo of do no harm. I think that it does trouble me that I eat meat now. I don't like it, but I do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I am not a pacifist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that my profession could allow me to be one. Acting is nothing but conflict. That's all it is. You can't have drama. You can't have drama without conflict. And just the way that I've lived my life, I don't consider myself a pacifist.
Dan, do you?
Yes.
Okay.
I was put in a situation where I almost got in a fight in my adulthood, and I walked away when it is something that I still hold, and I try to exhibit. Yeah, I still try to love. I don't know. I'll flip off someone who drives like a jerk.
Yeah.
I don't think that's. I will lash out, and yell and go, "You knucklehead!"
But yeah, this is the thing, Jansen, where I want to challenge you is because, see, my definition of pacifism doesn't mean there's never conflict.
Okay.
Conflict is always going to happen. It's how you choose to resolve that conflict. For me, pacifism is more about rejecting like militarism and military or violent solutions. And it was funny because I was asking my family about this today. I was getting ready to talk to them. And they like to tell these stories about, because we were talking about how I live in downtown Toronto, so it can be kind of rough sometimes. And there's multiple times where people have tried to steal my purse or my phone. And on instinct, I have told them creative
things. Them? You stabbed them?
I didn't stab them, but I did. I did punch a guy who tried to steal my purse without thinking. Like I just like turned around and clocked him on instinct, and then a guy tried to steal my phone, and I said something to him I won't repeat on YouTube, and my mom was just really shocked because she's like, "You're a pacifist," and I'm like, what's funny? Had he walked up to me and said, "Give me your phone," I would have handed it to him. Like, had the guy walked up to me and been like, "Give me your purse," I would have like non-violently given it to him. But I had this like instinct where I like fight.
Yeah.
But I also am doing I'm doing a postgraduate certificate in conflict resolution, where what I'm learning to do, so part of what I do in my consulting job is I've been helping organizations and churches that want to become less racist or deal with their history of racism and homophobia, and walk them through that conflict in a positive way. And it involves like very difficult conversations. It involves people saying things that many of us would find very difficult to hear. And it's like just teaching people how to have good conflict, as opposed to just like, you said something homophobic, F you, I'm out. Like, so that's kind of like my difference. And like, to me, I'm so sorry, guys. My cat is just.
No, I love her. No, she's doing great. She likes what you're saying. Oh, see, internet points. Oh, look, we just doubled our viewership. Look at that. The algorithm loves cats.
Yeah, so I think that's a long-winded way of saying, like, my pacifism still involves conflict, and if anything, is how do you do the conflict, and giving people good tools to do conflict.
Yeah.
I guess I'm more like Perrin in that, I guess. I'm a mixed bag.
Fair.
I'm a mixed bag. I am someone who avoids fighting, but I won't shy away from it I won't shy away from it if I'm in the position where I have to. And I guess, my upbringing growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, kind of was the reason for that. You had to protect yourself on the street sometimes, but I believe, and I don't, and is my wife a pacifist? I don't know.
She's a fighter of justice.
She is a fighter of justice. That is true. She is also the head of the Racial Justice Act for all of Los Angeles.
Mhm.
No, my wife is definitely not. She will fight.
Yeah.
She will fight very hard.
And I guess so. Let's reflect on that. So parents struggle, and I agree with you, Shelley. I in fact talked to Ryan earlier today, saying I think that Robert Jordan shared his beliefs through parents' discussion with the Tinkers in regard to his struggle with, well, what do you do if they're going to burn your house? What do they do if they're going to kill your kids?
Mhm.
And I do think that the Tinkers are the extreme in that they're like, well, we just run away, and if they take my child, well, we'll try to run faster next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Perrin, I think, was the balance there that Robert Jordan has, like saying he's introduced to this. And I mean, honestly, I considered it. Let's bring Beth back in. Yay. I considered it Robert Jordan was fighting in a time when there was anti-war sentiment, and the Tinkers kind of looked like hippies. And this might have been Robert RJ himself trying to empathize with those who were anti-war, but also have a civil argument with them in his works.
Well, there had to be people calling hippies lost ones.
Do we know if was he drafted or did he volunteer? Do we know?
He enlisted.
He enlisted, yeah.
And he served 2 tours, so he re-enlisted.
Yeah, considering where he's from, I think all the guys down there were, in that area of the country were enlisting for sure.
And then he went and studied at the Citadel, which there is no judgment on my part of that, except for there is a discipline there, I think. It is a more stringent atmosphere. I think people are cadets. They got a dress code and stuff.
It's a military college. It's like ROTC, but everybody is ROTC.
So for those who don't speak military, what's ROTC?
ROTC.
ROTC. It is basically military training if you're in college. And
they have it in high school here.
Yeah, and yes, they have high school. So I was in the military. So some background. I served in the Army from 1991 to 1995, and for me, it was a college-like experience. It's not like that for a lot of people who serve, but if you serve in ROTC in high school, you go into the military, you get some perks for being in the military as somebody who did ROTC. As well as a wee lass. So you go in, if you go in after high school, you go in as like a higher rank automatically because you kind of already know the quote unquote basics of what it's like to be in the military. If you go to college and you participate in ROTC in college, then you get to graduate. A lot of times you get perks for it so being here in the US, and Shelley, I know you're in Canada and some of our people who are viewing us are overseas. If you decide to serve in the military, then you can get some great compensation to help pay for your college as a person in the military. So you can either do that prior to enlisting in the military if you go to school and you participate in ROTC, then you can enter into the military as a low-level officer, or you can enter the military, and then after you get discharged from the military, you can have your college pretty much paid for after the fact. So you either go ahead of time and get your money provided to you, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to enlist and I'm going to do this term of service to help me pay for my college beforehand. Or you can finish school first and enlist, or finish your service first, and the military will give you the GI Bill, which is a very, my brothers were both also in the military and have taken advantage of the GI Bill. And it's amazing, but there's a toll to that. And if we want to talk a little bit later about the toll that violence can have on you in the after effects, without getting into too much detail, I would be more than happy to share that from firsthand experience from both of my brothers recently serving in the military. So, anyway.
Well, I appreciate your experiences, and I thank you for sharing that. Unfortunately, there is a need for a military in our world right now, and I thank you for joining and not being a jerk.
Yeah, but do we need as robust of a military that we have?
That's the case as well. But so
that's another argument for another day.
Go ahead, Ray.
Well, for the day, I mean, like, I feel like I must counter that sentiment. Like,
sure.
The idea of a just war, or the idea that we have to have a military. We are like the progenitors of the need for the military in the very beginning. Like like when we're talking about influence and that whole idea, like, we live in America, we have our hands in every pot in the world. Like, I imagine if our foreign policy was to become a humanitarian superpower and not a military superpower, the needs would drop precipitously. So I just want to put that out there. Way the leaf.
I agree with you.
And I agree. 100%.
I mean, as somebody who has served in the military, Ryan, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to be graceful. Tomorrow's Memorial Day. I mean, at least just there wasn't. Not everyone had the choice.
I will memorialize.
A lot of people were forced into battle.
Absolutely, but criticize the decision makers and praise those who are like valiantly
absolutely
doing the duty.
I've talked before about so my PhD is in religion, and a lot of what I focused on was Mennonites, because that's kind of the background I was raised in. That's where I came by my pacifism.
Really?
Church.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Aren't those the dudes that can like build a house in like 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Tear down a barn is what you're thinking of. But yeah,
I'm so here for Shelley right now. I love you already. But.
There's so many different types of Mennonites, right? Like, everybody's very used to the old order Mennonites who have like the horse and buggy and call each other mother and father and wear the caps.
There's a whole lot of these in Michigan, by the way.
Yeah, there's a lot.
You go up north, and you got to be careful on the roads, because there might be a buggy with a glowing triangle.
Pennsylvania too, except I think it's more Amish in Pennsylvania.
So one of the things that I found, so I took one of the courses that I took that really kind of helped me solidify was called War and Peace and Christian Theology, and it was fascinating because he made us go to a Remembrance Day ceremony and through a Mennonite church. And what we found is that there were a lot of Mennonites who, in Canada at least, a lot of people wanted to brand them as traitors, saying, you're against the war, you're anti-soldier, you're anti-this. But in Canada, the Mennonites were some of the people who provided veteran support post-war. Because I don't know about in the U.S., but in Canada, unfortunately, we ask so much of our soldiers, and then they come home and they get ignored. They go through all these different struggles. And the Mennonites were ones who started charities to help soldiers settling back into society post-World War I and post-World War II. So it's interesting because I've experienced tension from people who hear that I'm pacifist, and they go, you're anti-soldier. And I'm like, I'm not anti-soldier.
Nope. Yeah.
I am anti a place where the only way for you to access an education is through military.
Right.
I am anti a society where, at least in Canada, my favorite story was Veterans Affairs required this man who lost his legs in Afghanistan to every year provide a letter from his doctor proving that indeed his legs had not grown back. Thus, he was still entitled to wheelchair service paid for by the government. That's the kind of bullshit that I am against.
That had an expiration date on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. They grew back.
Hey, and there's proof that there's lizard
know?
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm done.
I got one.
First, your legs are still there.
Yeah. Or his legs hadn't grown back because he lost his legs in Afghanistan, and there's certain medical things that go along with that: your wheelchair, your care, your physiotherapy. To get that paid for by Veterans Affairs, he had to get a letter from his doctor every year. So that's the kind of bullshit that I get annoyed at. It's like no individual soldiers. My pacifism is for me, and I think foreign policy can learn a lot from pacifism. Yep. But I'm never going to say to a soldier like, "Shame on you." I'm going to say, "You felt right within your conscience, and I'm here for whatever. I'm here to support you in however that's what you need."
Yeah.
And I mean, and the majority of the people who enlist now are not super wealthy.
Correct.
They are seeing opportunities. They are seeing you can learn how to fix tanks and learn how to fix Jeeps and get a job here. You can be an engineer. You can do all kinds of things. Yeah. But the military, you're right. It's like this brutal militaristic training ground that, you want a job and you want money. But they're all weapons of death. This isn't what we're talking about, though, guys. Right. But let me connect that. So the Wheel of Time itself has many of the same aspects that our world has now, though, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I went to the Tigers game yesterday, and every time between innings, and I had really good seats, they were free. There was a cop on the field, an armed cop that had his hand on his gun and on his taser, just standing there, unless he was on the phone. As he was, it was so weird. But there were cops there just in case someone tried to run out in the field or something. I don't know who they were going to shoot, but they were 40 feet in front of me. It was stupid. But Rand, the first time he sees soldiers is in Andor, and this is a normal thing for soldiers to just kind of walk through and remind you that they're there. There was a parade coming into Andor with Logain, which I would equate to kind of a militaristic procession, although there was no tanks, there was no weapon. There was just Aes Sedai.
We caught Kim. Yeah, it'd be like we caught Kim Jong Un, and we were like,
we got El Osama.
Was that the first soldiers?
Jansen, you'll probably have this memorized. What did Tam say when they started asking about, like, when they're like, "Oh, we could go walk, we could go serve, like, and be protectors about this war."
I'm no fan of war.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Told them that it would probably be if you like wet nights and sleepless. If you like wet and sleepless cold nights. That's what he told them.
Yeah. And then Matt says, "I'm interested in battles."
Yep.
Right, but I mean,
greatest foreshadowing ever.
Theoretically, those three kids were prime suspects to be recruited into a militaristic kind of situation, take out of a small podunk place, be part of the national defense. Have glory.
Hey, I mean, they're much the same thing. Tam went and enlisted.
Tam enlisted, yes.
Well, I mean, even pre-Ilf and Elfin, Matt was starting to have war visions already, in Tar Valon, and he was already having them, so he was definitely for it.
Jansen, let's dig a little bit into your Aiel theory, because I think the Aiel are by far the least pacifist society in the entire book series. I can't imagine what it's like being in a second grade class as a ADHD little Aiel boy.
Yep.
Man, I would have to dig so many holes to find the perfectly round.
You'd run so many laps.
I'd have to run around the camp so many times. Oh man, they would have beat my ass. They totally would.
Yeah, when they're Gaishin, or however you want to say it, they have to practice pacifism.
It's a punishment. It's not, and it's shameful.
But they don't look at it as a punishment, though.
It's
not a punishment.
It's honor and obligation. That's why when they say they have toe, that's obligation, and that's why they become Gaishin, because it's their obligation. It's their belief system. It's their religion. So
it's not a punishment.
Yeah,
if
and they
you
try
look at those, yeah.
and they believe they get honor into
Yeah.
it.
And you can't touch a guy, Shan. You can't like backslap him and be like, get out of here. Like they never touch. Like they are gentle towards them, and the guy shouldn't have to be like gentle towards them.
Well, not even Gaishan. I mean, I guess to your point, even with Elaine, Avienda was like, "Hey, here's a belt, here's a knife. Do what you want. Go ahead, kill me if you want."
I think what's interesting, I don't know if you remember, but like Aiel talk about in battle, it's more honor to touch someone than to kill someone.
Yes.
I always found that kind of interesting.
And to take you captive
Yeah.
is the ultimate honor, and not
Your
killing.
arm, Janet. Yeah. But again, this is dealing with shame. So it's honor, but
it's not shame though. I think the thing that's super important to remember here is that, and we learn this when Rand goes through the pillars in Ruidian, that the Aiel view on pacifism is bastardized a little bit. And I say that because it's an extreme form of what is the opposite of who they think they are, right? It's when you look at the at Gaishan or Gaishan, however you want to pronounce it, you don't lose honor in becoming Gaishan. You are fulfilling your quote unquote obligation, but it is rooted in where they came from in regards to before. If you remember when Rand was viewing his ancestors' eyes, the reason why they broke off from the Aiel of old, the Daishin, or whatever what was the name of the society that formed Ruidian? And I hear your cat, Shelly, and I'm absolutely in
The
love.
Jin Aiel.
The Jin Aiel, right? Thank you.
I'm just gonna step over and give her some food and see if that helps.
I love her so much. I love it.
And before I forget, let me thank you, MaTsDaGger. Great call, wise one. Showing war and the horror of it without glorifying it is a perfect description, and I agree.
Agree 100%. But when you look at Rand's visions that he had, they were living extreme lives in pacifism, and extreme violence led them to go another way. If you remember, the first Maiden of the Spear was not one of Rand's ancestors, but somebody who was closely tied to one of Rand's ancestors. When she said, "My husband did nothing. This is my husband now." When she picked up a spear because her children had been taken away by force by men who did not live the life that they led.
Yeah, but she was one of Rand's ancestors.
No, she was not. It might have been. There might have been a relationship that formed after.
Yes, because remember, she dreamed that she was going to meet him, and I think that when their children are Rand's ancestors.
And that's possible, but you saw the birthing of the Maiden of the Spears right there in that moment, correct?
Yes.
So, but the thing is, though, she was living in when you look from an Aiel point of view, an extreme version, the way of the leaf, as we see with the Teamers, and one event or a culmination of lots of events, and then the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back led to her totally abandoning that way of life and embracing the 180-degree opposite. There's in the eyes of the early Aiel as we see them in the books, there is no gray. It is black and white. It's you are either going to stand up for yourself and take a stand, or be women, for lack of a better term. I don't know. What is it going to be enough to break your back to make you say enough is enough? So what we see with the Guy Shine and the way that the IEL interpret Giotto is a little bit, there's honor in it in a way, but it's still warped because it is steeped in the origins of pain and suffering.
Exactly.
And it's honoring what was, but in their own way. Because after a year and a day, you don't have to do that anymore. And there's no honor in continuing to do it after a year and a day. If you keep doing it after a year and a day, who are you?
Right. And Beth, to your point, I mean, it's
much.
Oh, go ahead, Jansen. I'm sorry.
I'm saying, well, they thought they'd dishonored themselves so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so to your point, though, Beth. So Egwene, before she goes to Saladar, she confesses to all of the Aiel that she lied to. She's like, "I'm not an Aes Sedai. I have toe." And guess what? They beat the fuck out of her. They're spanking her. They're whipping her. They're beating her until they get their fill, and they say, "All right, she doesn't have to go with me."
Wait,
They do.
I have to stop you. I have to stop you because Egwene made the decision when it was enough. The Aiel did not. It was Egwene.
It could have been one tap.
My toe is fulfilled. It was not the Aiel. It was Egwene who
it was after she got beat up, and she's like, "Are you gonna make me wait all day, or just beat me up?" And then she said, "This one has no toe with me."
But if Egwene had stopped after one slap, if she would have stood up and said, "I know what I did was wrong, but I did it for this reason, and I have honor in that, and I do not feel guilty for that."
So only one slap then isn't violent.
Wait a minute.
No, I'm not saying that.
I know what really happened. Hey, guess what?
Okay.
All right, talk to me.
The actual text. I know, I can remember. This is the actual text. What are you waiting for? Don't you know I've got someplace to go tonight? Pause. This woman has no more toe towards me. They dropped the bet. This woman has no toe towards me. Mm-hmm. So she had to, like, Egwene didn't say my toe was met. She said she was waiting. She refused to say that.
To back that down, yeah.
Like, do it. Yeah. But I mean, this was a painful. They beat her. I mean, there's no getting around that. I mean, that was the punishment. That's how you get your you release your shame, is for people to hit you with sticks.
But there's other ways you could have met her toe, and we're talking about the eel as a culture right now. There's other ways to meet your toe than getting beaten. You know, I mean, remember Avienda tried to buy her toe from Rand.
Correct.
Weren't some of those wise women in my memory like super pissed, and some of them were less pissed? But like it was obvious that so we literally got angry parents beating the shit out of like a child who will not fight back.
This hurts me more than it hurts you, Egwene.
No, absolutely, but how. This is not honorable to like lose your shit and start beating on someone because they offended you. That's not honor. That's
and I mean, I think this is one of the things I've struggled with personally with pacifism. Is you've seen this in communities where one of the foremost authors on pacifism in the Mennonite community, it found out later that he had been having relationships with his students, like his female students, and kind of pressuring them, and as a professor, that's not something you're supposed to do.
Was he doing it passively?
Yeah.
No, but here's my point, right? In the Mennonite community in Canada, there have been court cases where they have asked to be able to spank their children still because it's in the Bible, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yep.
They have instances of children saying, I did this, I asked my father talked to me about the punishment, and I said my punishment should be a spanking. And
I have two, Father, Papa. I have two.
It's so interesting. that you can claim a pacifism as strict as many Mennonites who were conscientious objectors, who went to war, went to prison instead of going to war, but still think that spanking your children is not violence because it's separated from the militarism. So it's a very human thing almost he's done with the IEL to be able to compartmentalize that. And I'd be curious if the Tuatha do spank their kids.
I was going to say, how about this question? Do you think Tam ever hit Rand?
No.
No.
Well, okay, so... And
I think he let it. I think he let all the women in the village beat him up, though. I think if Rand came up and said, "Nynaeve hit me with the stick,"
only
he'd be
one
like, well, he earned it.
He acted up, and that's when he punched. Not Owen Daughtry. He punched
Hater.
No.
Will Osteen. It wasn't Will Osteen.
No, it wasn't Will Osteen. It was a Conger. He punched in the nose for making fun of his gray eyes.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he talks about it, and
also feels bad about it.
Egwene
I feel like I've never read the books when I talk to Jansen about stuff.
Egwene also talks about Rand growing up, never being mad because nothing ever was big enough to upset him. That's in her POV. They were like the anger was there because she saw how angry Rand would get. But she said, growing up, it was just that nothing was around that upset him that much. So he still had the anger and he still had it in him, but growing up, he never really got in trouble. He wasn't a problem child. He wasn't wild like Matt or stolid like Kieran. That's what he claimed.
Which I think is rare.
All right.
I would also say that, like, I am a Tam stan. I love Tam. Is like wonderful.
High five.
But there we go. Robert Jordan. Sometimes I think he made Tam a little bit of a Larry Stu, which is the male equivalent of a Mary Sue. Like the perfect dad. Like Tam is the perfect dad, right? Like I have a feeling like if we were to go back to like a flashback, Tam's discipline would be, I'm very disappointed in you, son. And an raised eyebrow and Rand would just, in Tam's perfection, feel shame and behave again. So sometimes I feel like he made Tam almost too perfect a dad, which, great. I think that's, sure, let's have role models about what great dads could be. I'm fine with it. But it's also when we talk about, we don't know if he spanked Rand, but we also know that like Tam might have been written as a little too good almost sometimes. And this might be my own family relationship.
That is the weirdest complaint I've ever heard of.
Well, no, I actually understand it. I would say that Tam's the person he is as far in the timeline from the eye of the world because of all the trials and tribulations that he had to go through, considering that he did lose his wife. He's had a lot of loss. He's had lots of family is gone.
I think Tam is the personification of who Robert Jordan would want to be.
That's what I think.
The guy comes home from war and just
Well, like he comes. He finds the baby and he raises it.
Yeah.
And that could be what writing these books are for him.
I mean, we know he didn't have children. Was it because he couldn't and wishes he found a child in the snow? I mean, I don't know.
Ooh. So I have a question. I'd like to steer this conversation back to. Why do we think? So far, what I'm hearing is that y'all think that Robert Jordan added the Way of the Leaf because he wanted to grapple with, or he was grappling with it, and either came out subconsciously or consciously, but it has to do more with kind of his personal struggle with it. Could there be another reason why he added the whole idea of the way to the novels, aside from his own? Why even introduce it? Why at all? Just
corner of that Mennonite market.
Corner of the Mennonite market. I think that he shows range of who the different societies are. And you have extremes on both ends of the spectrum. And he does that on purpose. Because
I totally agree.
There is no black. There is no white. It's all gray in various forms of gray. And I think you see that in like Aaron's journey. And I think you even see that to some extent with the conversation that Rain has with Isla during the last battle when they're collecting arrows. If you remember this,
I do.
there's a little cutscene where Rain and Isla are collecting arrows on a battlefield and people are dead. They're also trying to find survivors. And, you know, there's almost like moderation in Isla, who's trying to talk to Rain about, you know, it's not always black and white. And again, look at like the dichotomy of like the Shan-Chan offering sanctuary to the Tuathalan, right? This colonizing society that conquered the entire eastern, what's now North and South. It's very like when you look at it, right?
Yeah.
Like the colonization of what would be North and South America in Robert Jordan's world by the Shan-Chan, to offer sanctuary to the ultimate pacifists. There's something to be said to that. So I think he did
but just so long as they swear the oaths, they don't care. I mean,
well, that's what I mean. But still, think about what they did to the native societies of that land.
Well, do you remember with Archer Hawkwing, their forebear, it was always said that during his reign, a child could walk across from the spine of the world to the Aerith Ocean with a purse full of gold without having to worry about getting hurt.
But it was done due to the rule of law. And
Yeah,
if
and a
you
heavy
break
hand.
that law, then you know there's literal hell.
You're gonna
Whereas
die.
the way of the leaf is we're gonna accept you for who you are, and I mean you see that when Elias, who definitely does not embrace.
Yeah, he's covered
the
in
way of
animal
the leaf, right?
skins.
Exactly. he is welcomed with, it might be some wary acceptance. You see the way Isla looks at Elias and accepts him, but he is still welcomed into the fold. And I find it very interesting. I just think Robert Jordan was trying to show extremes from one end to the other, both good and bad, to show that the various shades of there's so much in his world that there is no black or white. And if you try to live in black and white, you're not going to find, ultimately you're not going to find harmony, because there's a balance. It's all about balance, right? When it comes to Robert Jordan's works.
I think there's an element of writing things a little further on the extremes for dramatic tension, story progression. Like, I think there is an element of like all these things that he did, like showing the extreme of the Tinkered or the Tuathalan to give like that contrast.
Right.
Well, every single group of people in the books has a counter group. And not necessarily people, but like it's like the Tuathalan are, you know, the only opposite I can think of for them is the Trolloc hordes. You know, it's like you know, that's all. That's the one thing I can think of. But I can pretty much think of the opposite for every group.
I mean, you can think of the Sharans as the exact opposite. I mean,
well, see, I always think to put them up against them being opposite of the Shan-Chan for some reason. And that's what I see with them, because I see the Sea Folk and the Aiel countering each other.
Ryan, let me address your question in particular, and I was giving it some thought after we talked. And the Tuathalan, they are a peaceful pacifist culture that cannot integrate into society. And they, in fact, that's part of their cultures. They don't even go into cities, man. And I wonder if this is a metaphor for whether they just don't have a place there of, I don't know. I don't want to say of safety. I guess it's that if you are going to try to live this idyllic lifestyle, good luck going into the inner city or the outer city of Andor. Do that. You're gonna get knifed.
Yeah, and that's I think that's some of the prejudice Robert Jordan is showing.
Yes.
Or not Robert Jordan's prejudice, but when he talks about human prejudice, because I mean, there's very obvious elements of the Roma that he's showing in the Tuatha, who are very much prejudiced against in Europe, and the same thing. But also, what you said about the Shan-Chan and the Tuatha is interesting, because one of the interesting things about Mennonites, Amish, and many of those pacifist communities is part of their pacifism springs from a belief in being members and citizens of the kingdom of God and not of any country of, they would say country of man or country of humanity. So the idea of, if you were to kind of like put a real world spin on it, Mennonites wouldn't do that oath because of that. And, and much of their migration across the world has come from countries kind of starting to impose more rules on them that make them members of society. And so it's interesting that like, the Tuatha separate from the the Mennonites that Robert Jordan like used to influence them in that they're willing to take this oath. Because what is the oath to? Is it to wait to
serve?
To serve and to something else.
To wait and serve.
Yeah, wait.
To await.
Yes. What are the Tuatha going to do if the Shan-Chan decides service is military service? Like,
they're just going to run away.
What did the Tuatha do if the Shan-Chan conscript? It's an interesting thing that we don't see happen.
Yeah, but do the Shan-Chan have a draft?
They have a horse draft. Maybe they'll have a person draft.
They do have a horse draft, the horse lottery.
All right, so
I will also say that I think that the character Aram is a somewhat of a glorification of violence. He is seen as the anomaly, but boy, he is an attractive figure when he's laughing as he's cutting down Shido, and I mean, it's he's on the extreme. He's I would say he's
wackadoodle,
psycho.
Yeah, no, he turned into a little he's a psychopath. Yeah. Aaron's a total psychopath.
I would say he's psychopathic. And
yes, we can.
I personally think Aaron was supposed to be a dark friend.
Ooh. There are Tuatha dark friends.
And exactly. Don't you remember in the beginning of the Great Hunt, they had the meeting?
Yep.
There was a tinker in there.
Friend social. There is
hated
it. There.
Joachim Carradine saw a tinker there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that was written out, but I think it was supposed to be Aaron.
This is the best.
I wait.
Ever. Yeah.
Hey, welcome, Boz.
I mean, but okay. So, what about Laia? I think that's her name. She was she was
Laia?
the Tuatha one who was in the beginning of the Dragon Reborn.
Dragon Reborn.
Who came to Moraine.
And Min saw death.
And Min saw her death. And she tried to warn her and tried to warn Perrin. So this is a kind of a great dichotomy to talk about Perrin's struggle with violence versus the right thing to do, because Perrin tried to save her. If you remember, so the Trollocs attack the bull that they were kind of hunkering down. It was the Shienaran soldiers, so like Uno, Massima. This is before Massima realized that Rand was the dragon, or he was the Dragon Reborn. It was before he went off and started being the prophet of the dragon. And Perrin had cut himself off from the wolves, and he was like, I'm not listening to you. I'm not going to embrace this side of myself. I'm not accepting who I am. And then the wolves are like trying to like poke at his brain. They're like, listen to us, listen to us, listen to us. And finally, when he does, he realized that disaster's incoming. And it was is her name Wyatt? Am I right in
Maya,
remembering
yes.
her name?
Maya.
Yes. So she had come to find Moraine, and Perrin's like wondering, like, where does Moraine get all these women? Why is a tinker coming? I don't understand this. And he's had some interaction, so he kind of has a baseline knowledge of their society. And he tries to talk to her about that. Like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? And she doesn't really disclose her answer. She's like, I'm doing this because I have to do it. And he tries to save her life. But in saving her life, he does violence.
Yeah, she's how dare you. Yeah.
He is fighting Trollocs and Myrddraal to try to save her, but she still dies. So I find that particular scene in the books very telling at how like how could that have been done? And Min's like, she's gonna die. There's no way around it. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it's going to happen. So when you have that knowledge, when you have access to that knowledge, how do you use that knowledge to avoid conflict, to avoid violence? Like, is there a way to do it in Robert Jordan's world? Is there a way?
I had the exact what is I think where you're going, Beth, because in Robert Jordan's world, pacifism will never work because you have a big evil. Like, you have an evil, like just evil. It is personification of evil. It is like there's no social context to the evil.
Yeah, there's no quarter. They even say about it with Trollocs, there's no quarter, no.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're just born to do bad, right? No, there's no redemption for the Trollocs, which is an entire another conversation I think we should have on this show one night about. Anyway, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can we bring Trollocs to Jesus?
So, how about this? Now, I just, to prepare for this, I went and listened to the last couple chapters, Rand battling the Dark One. And I want to argue that the way the Leaf was present in his decision to not murder the Dark One. He had the Dark One in the pattern. He started to squeeze. He was going to destroy him, and he stopped. And I would say that was the ultimate pacifist action.
I agree with you, but I also think that G.E. Cho had a lot to do with it in his talk with Aviendha when she told him that taking the Dark One captive would be the best decision.
Okay.
Which in itself is the Aiel bastardization of pacifism, correct? Like, I mean, but also when you think about it, again, getting back to Robert Jordan's world, living in extremes, you can't have one extreme or the other to have a successful society. Because if you remember when he had the visions, Rand tried to spin a vision of the world without a Dark One, right? Without any kind of evil influence, so to speak. And he met Elaine again, and she was blank. Like, she knew who he was, but the things that made Elaine were missing, and he equated it to a person who had been turned by the shadow. And so I don't necessarily think in Robert Jordan's writings that I think that the touchstones that are great about the Tuatha'an in the book, they are there and they are redeemable qualities. But in Robert Jordan's world, like Shelley said, true pacifism cannot survive, because at the end of the day, you can't survive without the presence of the Dark One. Society would be a construct totally not necessarily based in depravity, but you need to have balance. It's all about balance. You can't have an extreme one way or the other in Robert Jordan's world.
But I mean, we had an example. We had Paradisen. We had a society that had no war, though. But it was considered Shangri-La. It was considered utopia. It was considered the goal, right? I mean, isn't that considered the goal for humans to not
Yes.
feel a desire to one up someone through violence.
But the thing is, though, that pacifism is a personal choice. It's a personal choice.
It's
You
a societal
can choose.
choice.
It's
it's societal.
But
wait. How's it?
That's why, Shelley, when you say that the Mennonites, when some of them say that they think that they should be spanked, it's because we have a history, a 500-year history of us hitting kids. So they think, all right, yeah, I should have this archaic thing that I know is a punishment if a kid messes up.
Okay.
I don't think any reasonable person, if hitting did not exist, where parents did not hit kids ever, I don't think these Mennonites would have been like, yeah, I stole the buggy and I went on a joyride. I deserve to be hit with a belt 6 times. That I think that's my punishment. Who would say that? I mean, unless we have this history, this societal, this this collective unconscious that children should succumb to beatings from adults.
I think I hear what you're saying, Dan. Because I mean, in the real world, a lot of people are like, the big thing people always ask pacifists is, what would you have done about Hitler? What would you do about this? What would you do about that? And I think what's interesting about it is, we envision a world when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When all you have is a military, all your solutions become violent.
Correct.
So it's like, you know what? I don't know what I would have done about Hitler, but I think in a pacifist world, maybe Hitler wouldn't have been allowed to happen. Yeah. And it's like, how do we imagine something entirely different?
Absolutely. Hitler's childhood was
let me ask this question, because I clearly, after this conversation, I should say I have some pacifistic ideals, but I'm definitely not a pacifist in the eyes of some of the people on this panel. And I love you guys, and I know you guys love me. But if somebody like Hitler, if somebody like Hitler were to rise up in a pacifistic society, because this is the thing, human nature, right? We have free will. There is going to be somebody who has a desire, no matter what the norms are. There's going to be always going to be people who are going to push the norms, push the boundaries of what is societally acceptable. So if we were living in a utopian pacifistic society like the Genial did, what would they do to counter a charismatic person who stands up and says, hey, this way of life might be a little bit different and might be a little bit better? And that change is brought on gradually.
Group hugs.
So, but okay. But just saying, because ultimately, if you look back societally, utopian societies have failed because men are fallible. We are fallible. We have faults and we have flaws. And at the end, ultimate power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Every single time.
So,
like what you're saying is basically, so all utopias, like when you look at literary utopias, they all become parodies of themselves, right? Because they are often like explorations of why utopia can't exist. But what's interesting is, like, people often speak about Hitler as though he sprung up.
He didn't spring up, though.
There are years of society, and so when people ask about things like that, it's like it's slow incremental change. It's like abolishing anti-Semitism. Like, I don't think I'm going to see pacifism in my lifetime, but I'm trying to plant the seeds.
Sure.
Being anti-racist, anti-homophobic, by tearing down structures that hopefully someday my friends' children and their children will have options other than military options to solve conflict on an international scale.
Yeah. So, I think it's
Isla right now.
So I think it's like realism versus optimism, right?
Yeah,
I guess like, so, and maybe that's where I am. I have a realistic view because I agree with Shelley. Everything you just said 100%. Like my son is queer. I have broadcasted that high and low. I support my son. I am an ally, tried and true, 100%. I'm also very realistic about the struggles that people today who live in the LGBTQ plus community struggle with.
My daughter's there as well.
So I have this I want if Christopher ever decides to have children and he raises them in an open home with worldviews that are all encompassing, I want them to be able to go out into the world and be like, this is my worldview and I love you no matter who the heck you are. I don't give a crap what the color of your skin is or what your genitalia is or
She was on a roll.
That was the government.
They're like, stop talking about genitalia.
Much love.
No, that's okay. So yeah, I think we don't need to litigate whether or not a pacifist society is tenable. Obviously, and sadly, that's. Oh, whoa! Hey, Beth. Sorry,
I just came back. I'm sorry, and I was on a rant in my freaking internet.
I mean, I think we were just going to say a bunch of intelligent things. That was like.
Summarized. Yeah. So
I'm just gonna be quiet now because my internet's being a bitch. So.
You did great. You did great. I think we got the gist of it. Yeah, so I was just saying we don't need to necessarily litigate whether or not it's possible to have a passive society. It's not. People suck. We have systemic. Yeah, we are all like damaged due to whatever this and that. But I do want to counter some of the narratives I think I'm hearing. Like the Tuatha are not extreme, in my view. The world around them is extreme. Mm-hmm. There are 4 million Jainists in India. Jainism is the most pacifist religious organization or belief system around. One of the oldest pacifist religions. They are the ones who will walk across and brush the street in front of them with palm fronds to make sure that no bugs are being squished. Right? They only eat fruit that falls naturally from the vine so as to not cause harm. I don't find that extreme at all. That's my worldview. I think like everything around.
I don't either.
No, everything around. Yeah,
Ryan,
everything
let me ask
around
you a
us.
question, though.
If you just wait, real quick though. If you just, I mean, like I think in the end, Robert Jordan respected the way of the leaf, saw it as the ideal, saw it as something that could be sought after, and I think he had he brought that up for a reason. I don't think he's trying to argue that the world is able to, embrace pacifism, but I do believe that people making those choices is a good thing. The more choices people make are good things. I'm not a pacifist because I think I'm making Joe Biden not sell arms. I'm a pacifist because I want my family and life to be peaceful. That's I have right. Like so, I don't think every pacifist needs to change the world. They're just making that choice, and I think it's fine.
Yeah, it's a personal example.
It's almost like, and the people who say, I love Jesus, I'm not going to talk to you about Jesus unless you ask me about Jesus, which is the best kind of Christian, in my opinion. Like, I'm going to live my life, and if you ask me a question, I'm going to talk to you about what I believe in. And I think that's the best form of any life choice you make. Like, you live by example, and people will say, oh, hey, you're a little bit different. What makes you different? And if someone comes up to Ryan and says, what makes you different? Why are you this way? It opens a segue to conversation to say, hey, this is why I don't think violence is the answer. I think that it is living by example is the greatest form of I don't want to use the word ministry, so to speak, but you know what I mean? Like it's not necessarily ministry, but it is you just being able to right. So, and I think I live in Texas. I'm in the Bible Belt. Everything goes back to like
you're the buckle
ministry. I don't really have another.
What part of Texas?
It is huge.
My buckle says BAMF. badass motherfucker. That's what my belt buckle
Mine
Nice.
says "Shine on, you crazy diamond."
Exactly.
With an arrow pointing down.
I'm in the DFW area, Jansen.
Ryan,
But,
let me ask you. And go ahead, Jansen.
we'll talk about this later. So, anyway, sorry. Just
Ryan, let me ask you. So you had mentioned Rand. Rand to me. I'll state a couple examples. During Do My Wells, he's like, "Hey, Tame, I told you to make a weapon. I want to see this shit.
Yes.
Show me,
Oh, yeah,
show me
yeah.
what you got." There were bodies piled up. I mean, and in reflection, the destruction looks kind of like landmines and machine guns.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
and he only has a conscience when he hurts a woman. No,
well, he also throws. He also destroys that house. He's like, Grendel. No, who knows who was in that house? He
Mattress
blew
Barrow.
the entire thing.
Arrow.
yeah,
But they were all
Hundreds
under
of
compulsion.
thousands
They were
of-
all,
hundreds
they
of
were all
people in
walking
there.
zombies.
But so this last bit, I think, was him attaining enlightenment and realizing something. But this wasn't a pacifist. In my head, this was not a pacifist act.
What was
It was him. Because he could have very easily just keep squeezing and
Yeah, but
he was looking at
yeah.
further consequences, but not necessarily his own actions per se. He could have killed him.
he could have killed the Dark One.
Wasn't
have killed the Dark One.
yeah.
so-
it wasn't because it was because of moral
All right, no,
qualms
well, how about
about
that?
the
Yeah.
violence he may have done. It's because he's like, nah. It turns out we probably need this guy.
Well,
Free will.
which is a benevolent decision.
So
No,
it was
like,
a peaceful. It was, yeah.
The entire arc of Rand is that he felt like he needed to harden himself to fight. He went there with the intention of destroying the Dark One. He wanted to fight, and then he had his interactions with Tam when they were practicing the sword forms, right? And Tam teaches him to let go. And I think he attained enlightenment, and the decision he made was an enlightened decision, and it was to allow for humanity to continue.
I will say that once we see Rand light the pipe and walk away, that dude is doing no violence ever again in his life.
Which is so we all agree that's a nice ideal.
I agree.
But no, we don't all agree.
So
I don't
Jansen, stop fighting. Beth,
No, I agree with you.
Stop fighting.
It's been there, done that. We're done with that. But I just want to backtrack a little bit
Yeah.
Okay.
because before Veins of Gold, just before Veins of Gold, where did Rand go?
7-Eleven? I think
No, he sat on the top of Dragon Mount. Didn't he
No,
shoot himself?
before
out
that, just before he went to Dragon Mount, where was he?
he was with Tam in the.
No.
Oh,
Where did he
bolted?
go after he had his outbreak with Tam?
Oh, and he freaked out and he bolted away. Where did he go? I thought he went
Where'd he
straight
go?
to the. I thought he went
No.
straight to the tip, and he was like,
He
"Oh."
went to Abu Dar.
He went to Abu Dar
He went to Abu Dar with
to kill everybody.
Sangreal. He was going to kill Abu Dar and all of
Everybody.
Shanchan. He went there. If you remember, that's where the beggar's cloak came from, the prophecy, because he had traded his cloak for a beggar's cloak to try to detract from having attention brought to him.
Yes.
And he went there, and he went and he looked, and he saw how orderly the city was, and how there was no crime, and there was no poverty under a militaristic rule. He could not bring himself to kill an entire city of people because of who invaded them. And it was
Interesting.
that realization that made him go to Dragon Mount. And that was the breakthrough that led him to the Veins of Gold, the entire thing about him accepting who he was, opening up and having the memories of Luce Theron come upon him. This is my thing. Robert Jordan did not want to deal in extremes in either way. And I embrace activist pacifism. I embrace it. Like Shelley's way of pacifism, that's the way I choose to live. I'm vegan. I don't want to see a cow killed for somebody's food at the end of the day. But a world in extremes, either one way or another, there is always going to be a bad apple who plants a bad seed. There has to be a counter to that bad apple. There has to be realism in place to keep those people that are going to come, because people are people and we are fallible, in check. And if you are living in a peaceful utopian society with no means and no knowledge of what that is, how do you counter that? If you're living in
so let's go with the assumption that Rand does become entirely pacifist after he switches bodies, lights a pipe, walks away.
I hope he does. I would love that.
Do we think he's getting involved in politics? Do we think that he's becoming an activist?
Nope.
Robert Jordan had people who had peaceful thoughts just go away. Just you're a nomad. You wander. You go sit in a cave. I imagine Rand could sit in a cave for 30 years. I
don't think he's going to teach his son the sword.
He's not going to see his kids, man.
No.
He's going to maybe send them a Christmas card or two.
That's a whole other conversation.
A PS5, and they're like, "Who's this from?" It's from your father.
Are you saying Rand becomes a dad joke? He's not going to be good.
No.
He's the anti-Tam.
I'm not buying it.
He's the anti-Tam. Well, no, because he knows he's going to be a target. He's always been avoiding people. He didn't even.
You don't think that you don't think Elaine's going to want her kids to even see him at all?
I agree.
She grew up without a dad.
Come on, man.
Okay, this is the thing, though. Jansen's right, because Rand says in the epilogue, he wondered which one of them was going to come find him first.
Come find him.
Yes.
But they're going to find him.
He's not going to them. And what's Elaine going to say? Oh, you have your dad's nose. I mean, not now. His you used to have his nose. Oh, and you have his hair color, but not now. You used to.
Jesus.
It's the weirdest 23andMe ever.
Keep in mind, you're also talking about the fact that this is one of the greatest swordsmen alive right now.
Say again?
This is one of the greatest swordsmen alive right now.
He's going to give up the sword.
He was. He's not going to teach his son. Like, there's no way.
No,
he's got a guy.
He's Jiminy Cricket. He's skipping along.
One of his sons is going to be first Prince of the Sword.
No,
okay?
I don't agree with you there, Jansen. But I do think he's going to be involved with his kid's life. It might not be as a father necessarily, but
he's just
going to be there.
Break.
He's a godhead.
Nope.
Hey, nothing good comes from when gods interact with humans. All right,
his kids are going to know exactly who he is.
He's going to become like Zeus. He just can't even relate.
Lie to her kids about it? No. No way.
All right, I think this is a show for another episode, and I really want to get into just how horrible Dad Rand would be. But let's Jansen, you had said that you had found a few examples. What other I struggle to find true examples of pacifism as being advocated besides the way the Leaf, and that's kind of it. So give me another example besides the IO, which I don't. That one's a stretch for me. I guess her saying "hit me" and I won't hit back is. I don't. Anyways, where is there a true pacifism besides the way of the Leaf, which is?
Well, I talked about it with the groups, but one of the things I wanted to talk about earlier when we were talking about the Aiel is the pact. The pact that the Aiel have to people that come and trade with them.
Ooh, yes, that's good.
People weren't talking about, and that is a pacifist act. That there is no violence done. There's nothing to happen. And remember, when Huron walked into the setting, he had a huge smile on his face. And he said, Lord Rand, I don't think there's ever been any violence here other than maybe a quick accident or something. The air smells fresh.
Yeah.
So remember the pact. Remember the pact.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I don't consider that pacifism because Canada and America have nonviolent trade agreements, but neither of us are pacifist nations. And
Oh my God, I'm here for this debate.
Pacifism is the thing is
like is a big choice of like how to exist in the world. You can like, but people who aren't pacifists can do acts of nonviolence, and that doesn't make it a pacifist act.
totally. But isn't pacifism and it's a choice no matter what, right? So it's a choice no matter what. So anybody who's pacifist can at any time be not pacifist.
Yeah, I can choose, but then I'm like, I think the thing is, then I'm no longer a pacifist. So if I like,
So if you
if I'm a pacifist to Dan but not to Ryan, I think then I'm a shit pacifist. I would say.
So then the only pacifist that there ever was is the guy they call Jesus. Then.
Well, the Shinearans say peace all the time, but I think it's peace favor your sword.
Sword.
Saying, I hope you don't have to kill someone today. I don't know if that's pacifist.
Robin, stop that with your logic.
So I think what I'm trying to say, Jansen, is so for me, pacifism, I'm not perfect at it. And that's what I mean when I say like I accidentally punched the guy who tried to steal my purse. Like I'm not perfect.
Royal literally sings himself a weapon.
I'm always trying to make myself more pacifist. So I would never, to me, it's like, I'll use Canada. I don't want to pick on America, but like Canada.
Pick on America, please.
No, it's okay. Canada chooses countries to have non-violent agreements with and trade agreements with, but then chooses other countries to be at war or conflict with. And to me, those aren't pacifism. That's like economics influence trade agreements and policy making.
Okay.
Canada being a pacifist nation would be our military is entirely for self-defense because there are pacifists who believe in self-defense.
Would you consider Japan?
What's it called? Disaster response.
Okay.
So would you consider Japan or Germany pacifistic at this point because the World War II treaty required them to only have a self-defense military in place?
I want to answer your question, but I also feel like we keep cutting off Jansen.
I'm sorry, Jansen.
No, it's okay. So, do you think you can make an oath to be passive? I
think you can make an oath to try.
Yes.
Okay. I think
so.
But
so that being said, can you compartmentalize that and make an oath with a certain group of people?
But then it's not pacifism; it's a trade agreement, or it's a non-violent agreement, or a non-arms agreement.
Non-aggression.
So, are you the guys the same thing?
I don't think so because then I'm applying it to one group but not another.
Okay, because
so
I try. I don't always. I am human and I suck sometimes, but I don't always end up treating everyone the same, and I don't always end up treating everyone non-violently. But I do try.
Guy shine to a wetlander.
But the trick is when Shelly is mean to someone, she beats herself up for it.
Horribly.
So she's an Aiel to herself and a tinker to the world.
So Life Riley Boole just brought up something really interesting in chat. He brought up Tremalking.
All right, let's pull it up. Tremalking probably hasn't had a war in a long time.
Tremalking was the island where the female Sangreal for the Chodan Call was located. Yeah. And after Nynaeve and Rand cleansed the source.
That was this was the next thing I was about to talk about.
Oh, awesome.
The orb exploded, basically. It was destroyed. So the female Sangreal could no longer be used.
Yes.
And as a society,
the MIR.
The MIR, they committed mass suicide.
Yes, but they follow the waterway, which is also another pacifist society in the Wheel of Time. They don't do any violence or hurt anyone. And the only thing they do is trade with the Seafarer.
By committing mass genocide to themselves, mass suicide, whatever you want to call it, does that totally negate their pacifism
Oh wait,
by killing themselves?
sorry, I just confused farmatting and trimulking. I'm glad
Well,
that
I do it
what
all the
might have
time.
Okay,
been-
Shelly. It's okay.
Beth, the way that we may view this is that it was the ultimate withdrawal from a global war. It was
Okay,
the
I can
last
see
battle
that.
is here, and
Okay.
we are obviously not going to participate, and we don't agree with it, and so we just remove ourselves from the situation.
Well, I think that they were trapped during the breaking of the world on an island far enough away from everything.
They're just wet tinkers.
Kev, you're gonna make me pee my pants. Oh my
Wet
god!
tinkers, I like that.
I will not be
Wow.
pacifistic if Kev makes
Moist.
me pee my pants.
Moist
Oh
tinkers.
no, Ryan, why? Who said
Wait.
So I
that?
do have another.
That
There is
Kev
also
person,
another-
Kelly. Who is that Kev person?
There's
Pardon?
also another passive society that I have to talk about in the Wheel of Time, and that is the Shanchin Dako Vale. They cause no violence to anyone. They, in fact, they don't participate in even if their houses get broken into, and their lords are fighting with intruders. They don't fight.
Go
They
crazy.
get on their
Oh.
they get on their knees and kneel their heads. So
Is that a choice?
well,
Yeah.
they're Dako Vale. I mean, that's the thing. They're Dako
Or is
Vale.
that ritual? That's ritual.
That's
It's
a-
not
you know,
choice.
I'm glad
That's
you
a
brought this
societal
up.
norm. That's
They
placed
don't.
upon
They
them.
still
Slavery.
live very good, passive lives.
But
No,
it's
that's-
but it's slavery.
It
It's
is slavery.
Slavery.
But
Yeah.
you can choose to become Dako Vale to someone as well.
Nuts.
But again, societal
David
norms
did that
placed
to the
upon
Emerald
you.
as well.
You know what? I really do love the sheer dresses.
Of course you do, Ryan. If I was married to who you're married to, I would love the sheer
Sheer
dresses
dress.
as well. I mean, just saying.
She loves me in the sheer dresses also.
I'm sure she does.
So that's an interesting. See, Jansen, that's an interesting thing because, to me, they're part of a society that is not pacifist.
Yeah.
You're right.
They're not. And I bet in many circumstances they don't get to choose, and that to me is kind of an interesting. And this is why, like, I'm not an old order Mennonite, right? Like, to me, a lot of the things that in that society where you lack that choice take away from the power of it, because there is, you know. But I mean, anyways, that we're getting into much more philosophy. But that's an interesting point you bring up. But I don't.
Yeah, no, these people are broken. They have been broken.
Yeah, they're
and
cowed.
will not
But
do
here's
anything
the
unless
thing,
instructed.
though. You know, like the Dako Vale, to say someone in the imperial family is treated throughout society pretty much like someone in the royal family. You know,
Don't they kill themselves once
Yeah.
Turok dies?
Yeah.
some of them do if their devotion is that deep, but some of them
Is it a
don't.
choice? Is it a choice?
It is to kill yourself, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
I mean,
once
no
your
one else-
authority
no one
figure
else has their-
dies.
No one has
Yeah.
their hand on their knife, you know, other than them.
So
That's-
basically, that's
that's
interesting.
right.
I think of it like the Dakava are like a slow motion compulsion. That
I mean,
has to
that's
be
their
right.
devotion. Like the Aiel back in the day was their devotion to not pick up a knife towards someone, to not kill someone. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
it's an
you would-
interesting because if they don't, what is the societal consequence? Did you guys ever watch Sliders?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was an episode of Sliders where you entered a lottery, and if you won the lottery, you would get a credit card to be able to do whatever you want for a month or a week or something. And then at the end of that week, you had to commit suicide as a form of population control. And then if you didn't commit suicide at the end, people would come after you and make you commit the suicide. So the question is, like, if one of those Dako Vale had been like, "Oh, look, I stabbed myself," and then ran away,
It's ketchup.
yeah,
And it's spilled.
saying that the Dokavel it has autonomy in this is like saying the Solnam or the Damane rather have autonomy. They don't. And the ones that get beaten into submission finally just stop resisting, and yeah, they would probably kneel if this shit's going on. I think this was a long, really traumatic process for these cats to get to become High Lord Turok's servants. And I don't consider that necessarily like positive.
Like
What's
it
that?
was like families, just like lords and ladies in Randland served generationally. So do Dako Vale and Shanshan.
That's crazy.
Same
Boy,
thing.
that's fucked up. Boy, ain't that fucked up. You get born to a Dokavale.
Yeah. that's-
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Are they even allowed to fuck?
yes.
Yeah.
They're
Good question.
families. Other Dako Vale. Like it
So
said. I
this-
mean, it even said that Shalusha told Tuan how to kiss man. So she obviously hooked up with somebody before, like
okay.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
So all the examples are gross then, is what we're saying. All the pacifist examples are gross. Except for the 12th one.
No, they're the OGs. No,
And
again, like,
Tamor.
they're not extreme. That means the world's, yeah. Anyways,
I do like to think that Tamal Thor was pacifist, did not beat his child, and the child turned out to be pretty dang well adjusted, was respectful to women, even though he didn't have a mother figure in the house. I think Tamal Thor did a great job at raising this boy, and I doubt he's spankled.
I also think Matt and Kieran had a lot to do with Matt's upbringing as well.
Oh, good point. No, I love that's. Hey, that's actually a great conversation for a different time because just like I just re-listened to the last chapter with Perrin and Lanfear, and he's just like, "I'll always have your back." Oh my god! Yes, we takes a village to raise a child. It takes a pacifist super dad to raise the Dragon Reborn. This has been an amazing discussion. I'm so glad we had this. I'm so glad.
So let me ask you: will the fourth age be peaceful?
No,
Ryan, come on.
No, I'm here.
Does Ganther have to go?
You
That's
know
what I thought.
You know what?
Oh,
The
shit.
fourth age piece is going to be a mutually assured destruction piece because of the dragon's piece. It is not based in we're going to trust you to do what you do and we're going to do us. It is the fact that the Aiel are going to be the police of all nations, and y'all got to keep your stuff in check or the Aiel are going to rain havoc on you.
But
It is
there's
not a
still the
pacifistic treaty.
there's still the Sharn marches and
100%.
the Shanshan that are going to be fighting with Tuan.
It's not a pacifistic treaty. So I think that there's going to be pockets of culture that are going to love the fact that they're not having to worry about their borders being invaded. Murundi specifically, about overreaching societies. But I think that the basis of the dragon's piece itself is, again, humans are fallible.
What you want to be? You want to be on Maine on the beach sipping a cocktail. That's where
There
you
you go.
I would
There
love
you
to
go.
be Barrelane's best friend after the final
That's exactly where you want to be.
Anyway.
Well, but no, to that point though, I do believe that the academies that Rand started are going to help advance the societies and get them closer to the
Agreed.
Age of Legends style, piece.
Not to mention the iPhone that they have. Remember?
Yes, they got the iPad.
Yes, they got the iPad in the White Tower.
They invented Wi-Fi. No, it's all there.
Oh, they're gonna have elevators soon. Remember, Alviran talked about.
Yeah,
Sana
but I
told
think
him-
but Brother Dan, I don't think Rand assumed it's going to be a peaceful world that he's allowing to continue. He just wanted for everyone to have the choice to keep going. So I don't think he had any compunctions about like making a beautiful like Shangri-La. He just said let's let it roll.
Oh,
and
Tharava is still up there too.
Ooh, I love a Tharava.
And we also do see the IEL future
He's an
with
evil
the
person in a really great way.
the Shanshan just take.
Oh
IEL.
yeah, the Shanshan are fucking him up.
So we don't have a future of peace really, and it looks like if the IEL tried to become Gen, they would have just got steamrolled again. I mean,
Well,
okay,
the
sorry
Shino
about that.
would be taking it to the chin, pretty much.
Sorry, I missed what you said there.
said the Shido are going to be taken into the chin pretty much in the 4 days.
That's funny. I thought you said to the gin.
No.
This
Take it to
is
the chin.
the beautiful thing about becoming a better person, becoming a more peaceful person, becoming a more pacifist person is there's always something to strive for, right? There's always better you can do, and
Yes.
I think that's the hopefulness of Robert Jordan is there's still a lot to solve, but in the end, he does show the ability of humanity to kind of start making that striving towards that better world. And so, all those things you just said got me a little sad. I'm like, oh man. But at the same time, it's like, those elements of hope are what really makes the book interesting and what kind of, gives me faith about being a pacifist is that, like I said, I've been working, I work a lot with Indigenous people, and they always talk about the 7 generations effect. Like, think about what you're going to do as though it's going to affect 7 generations down the path. And that's, I think that's what we're trying to do.
Damn, that's crazy. I worry about having heartburn tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't plant a tree for you.
I mean, I worry about that too. But I also am like, when I write my politician or when I, treat my friends' children with gentleness, I'm like, I'm just trying to plant good seeds for future generations.
I love that, Shelley. Yeah, planting seeds is a great metaphor.
Shelley, I'm really glad. I appreciate your advocacy and your activism in this, and your your advocacy to people who don't necessarily have an eloquent voice that they're able to project their plight.
Love to talk and tell people what to do.
Hey, and just like the Wheel of Time Amazon show kind of demonstrated, there is passive non-resistance, which is not necessarily what the Tinkers do, although they do help out in the last battle. I forget what function they did. They're like kind of supply chain or something.
Ryan, to your point earlier, let me just say we still stand with the Writers Guild of America. This is the ultimate example of nonviolent resistance in the face of a corporation. I know that the Amazon series has opened up the floodgates for season two, but let's still remember who wrote season 2 and who season 3 is depending on. Let's still stand with them and hope that things work out. We have always been pro-union, and we continue to be.
To be honest, we had a hard time celebrating the news because it does feel like Rafe is a little bit silence. He was gonna every week talk about a writer on his Twitter account for WOT Wednesday, and he did it once, and then he has not tweeted since. So that's been now we're on week 3. And Rafe is silent, so I can only imagine what pressures he's under.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it might go through September, man.
Absolutely no, there's no correlation. People try and compare this strike to the last strike. These are different companies we're up against now. These are Amazon, Netflix. These are big tech companies. These aren't the old industry of Time Warner and what have you. So these negotiations are going to be a lot harder, I believe, and nastier. And for all reports are that they are not negotiating in good faith. So let's just keep keep up the good fight. Support the writers.
And to that point, I mean, this is how pacifism can grow is through a collective union. We can only
100%.
control ourselves. We can't control other humans. We can try to influence them. We can try to set a good example. And hopefully, collectively, we can make some sort of imprint on this.
Absolutely.
Okay,
right.
can I plug something real quick because
Please.
it's happening tomorrow.
Plug away.
So May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. I'm a melanoma survivor.
Beth, yep.
Shelley is a melanoma survivor. And I am going to be doing, and I know not everybody here is a gamer, but I am. So that's the platform that I am choosing for this fundraiser. I'm trying to raise $1,000 for the Melanoma Research Foundation. That link is actually live on my Twitch channel now. So if you go to Twitch TV /Beth Doman, just all one word, there is a little link up in the top right-hand corner that says charity donation. If you guys can find it in your hearts to contribute something to melanoma research, that would be great. Wear your sunscreen. no matter what you're doing, even if you're outside for 5 minutes, please wear your sunscreen. And it's something that's super important. And thank you so much, MaTsDaGger. Yes, that is.
Yes,
you can find a little
awesome.
button there. I'm being ambitious. Thanks to actually it was Brother Dan who encouraged me to be a little bit more ambitious with my goal. So I'm trying to raise $1,000 for melanoma research. And I know there's a lot of great charitable causes out there. And I'm going to be streaming tomorrow for 6 hours at least, from 10 a.m. on until I hit my goal. And if I hit my goal really early, then I'll just go as long as I feel like it. Yeah, so just say hi, stop by, say hi. Just encourage me. I'd greatly appreciate
everyone,
it.
She promised to not take a break at all for 6 hours. So she's got to pee. No, she's got to stay.
I'm gonna
so
pee.
you gotta,
I'm gonna pee.
Everyone,
that's the marathon.
I'm gonna pee if I have to pee. I am almost 50. My bladder is not what it was 25 years ago. So if I have to go to the bathroom, I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
If you gotta go, you gotta go.
Exactly.
Come
but that
on.
being said, it's
Yes.
something that's near and dear to my heart. And I went through a year of treatments in 2010, and it was a rough year. I had a port in my chest. I lost all my lymph nodes under my left arm. It was a struggle, and I would do it again. If I had to, I would do it again 100 times over. And, you know, if anybody out there is currently fighting cancer of any kind, I feel you, I hear you, I see you. Keep fighting, because your life is worth it. You are worth it. Your family is worth it. Don't give up. And fuck cancer.
I knew what you mean, man.
So fuck cancer.
and
love.
doctors
Fuck
are
cancer.
wizards. Doctors are wizards. Surgeons are magicians, and research matters. Things are
And medical
are
technology
learning
is
every day.
amazing, even compared
Yes.
to 10 years ago. Just in the cancer that I know about, that I'm involved, that I've experienced, the research and the strides that have happened just in the last 10 or 15 years in cancer research in general are amazing. And fuck big pharma and fuck for-profit health insurance. I'm going on my diatribe there for a second. I'm sorry, but
No,
anyway,
please.
yes.
Yeah.
Let's
There's not a person that hasn't been
do what
touched
we
by
can.
cancer that
Yes.
hasn't had
Let's do
someone.
what we can. And
Yeah.
Okay, I'm off my
but
soapbox.
yeah,
I love
and
you
all we
guys.
can do is just kind of throw a little support and say, hey, we still are looking for cures. We're still looking for something. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Beth. I'll be there. I hope
love
people
you
in the
guys.
chat
I
are going to
love
be
you guys.
there. I want the marathon. It do be marathon.
It do be a marathon.
I like that.
It do be. It do be.
Can you take calling guests while you're playing?
I'm not that savvy. I love you, but I'm not that savvy.
Come on, I got a Twitch channel. We'll jump in.
I mean, I can co-stream with you guys on. I can figure out how to do it. I can do a guest. Twitch does have a guest feature set up, so I can do that. Tom wants me to figure that out, and I just haven't gotten around to doing it yet. So, I mean, I can definitely do it. I'll figure it out. So,
Shelly, what do you got? Tell me.
sorry,
I
Shelly.
feel like I should plug my show, but I think everyone in your chat also.
No, plug your
No.
show. Plug it.
Millions of people might watch this in the future. You never know.
You know, Thursdays I hang out with some other beautiful, smart, intelligent, wonderful, badass ladies, and we talk Wheel of Time. I play a character named Wise One Shelley,
And another guy.
and another guy named Rob. Who, yes, sometimes
I was about to say, did something change with Rob?
He's just the bus driver while all the fun goes on in the bus.
Also on YouTube, subscribe to Rob's channel to get notes, and we play games. We talk usually about the show. Sometimes we'll have discussions about the book, and we tell people if they have toe.
I like the Ask a Wise One feature a lot.
Nice.
Yes.
I like Ask a Wise
Same.
One. It's very humbling. I love it.
Jansen, you NDA filled man. Is there anything that you can tell us is coming up for you?
Man, I'm waiting for this strike to be over with, man.
Yep.
Yeah. Are the actors going to join the strike, you think?
Dude, they're out there all the time, man.
They're out there all the time.
I thought they're
we
officially
support
like
Jansen. We support you
Yeah.
supporting the writers.
It's a joint effort, man, because it's like if they get what they want, then we're gonna start coming back for what we want too. You know, it's like it's tough. It's streaming, you know. It's you know, when it was all network, it was easier to track, but when you got companies like Amazon boasting on NASDAQ, we're making gains, record gains never made before, and they're still paying writers the same amount of money for way 10 to 100 times more people watching and enjoying their work.
Yeah, they're making the writers temporary workers, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Bullshit, man. So I mean, they're not asking for anything unreasonable. So I think that, but to have the most clichéest Hollywood sounding ever, but the show must go on. It's gonna resolve itself hopefully soon. And when it does, I can't wait because there's gonna be so much work. It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, really, it's gonna be a flood.
Yeah, you might not see me for a little bit when that happens.
Let's hope this strike continues for at least 2 years then, I guess, right, Ryan?
No.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was selfish.
I mean, no, that's not the ideal situation there.
Yeah.
Ryan, go ahead and wrap us up, I guess, now. Anything else we need to do?
No,
Thanks so much for letting me talk about this.
Oh, you're welcome anytime, Shelly.
I love you.
All right, everyone. Go in peace, and we'll see you next week.
Love you guys.